Hello and welcome back to another episode of Joe's No Sports Shows. We're going to transition over to our fantasy segment now. We're taking fantasy away from our NFL show just so that way we can really get some more diverse content and get better fantasy content out because a lot of people, especially now, focusing more on fantasy. But welcome once again to your show, Giacomo Imperiali, joined here by Matt Freeman, Dominic Urbafina, and Richie Zangara. A lot of people's drafts coming up. NFL season a little less than a week away, or excuse me, a little over a week away. So everyone's in their midst of the draft season. We have our targets and avoids, and we're going to try and help you win your fantasy draft. So, Matt, I'm going to kick it over to you first. You have the running backs today. Who are your targets and avoid?
Yeah, so I'm going to start it off with my biggest target as a running back, and he's going to be more of a high-end guy. He's going to be a first-round pick type of guy, but I think Breece Hall is going to win leagues this year. He finished off as the second best running back in the league. He was the RB2 in PPR leagues last year with only one goal line carry, a terrible offense, and a bottom three offensive line. I think as we see that offensive line continue to develop like they did this year by bringing in Morgan Moses, Vera Tucker gets healthy, bringing in All-Pro Tyron Smith, drafting Olu Fashanu for depth, that offensive line is going to take the next step, which is only going to allow Breece Hall to run more wild than he did last year. And then obviously the goal line touches are going to go up significantly. And a guy that I'm going to stay away from a little bit this year is Alvin Kamara. I think there's too many people that are very high on him right now. That Saints offensive line is going to be one of the worst in the entire NFL. I'm not a big fan of their entire offense whatsoever. I don't think that Alvin Kamara really has it anymore. His age is catching up to him. So I would probably stay away from Alvin Kamara just based on where he's being drafted in most fantasy drafts.
Yeah, I mean, last year everyone was calling him a bust, but for some reason this year a lot of people higher on him just because of specifically the ADP. I agree with you, Matt. I'm not really sure why all the hype is getting around him after he was a major bust last year. But Dom, I'll go ahead and swing it over to you. You had the tight ends this week.
Yeah, so I'll start with my target. My target is Evan Ingram. Last year he was tight end 3. Ridley and Zay Jones are out of that offense, which opens up. He's the number one option. I also think that you can get him in the 5th, 6th, possibly 7th round, and he has tight end 1 upside. So I'm definitely drafting him in all leagues. And my avoid actually is Mark Andrews. I still feel like Mark Andrews is gonna have a solid year. I just feel like he's being drafted way too high. I think his ADP is like tight end 3 or something like that. And I also feel like Likely is gonna step up and play a big role in that offense. So
And we saw Likely be a monster when Mark Andrews missed time. I mean, the guy is just straight up a great talent. So obviously Andrews will lead that tight end room, but Likely can definitely, I'd say, eat a little bit into that target share. Rich, though, the Ravens fan himself, I'll throw it over to you. You're the wide receivers today.
Go get Cooper Kupp, Los Angeles Rams, going as the wide receiver 26 in the late 4th. You can find wide receivers like Devontae Adams and Devontae Smith and Jerry Jeudy. And we got to remember 2 years ago, he was the best fantasy wide receiver, hands down. And he still dominates the slot, and we've seen him get the red zone touches even in his 2023 season when he was hurt a lot. And from what we've heard, he's the number 1 receiver for Stafford in 2024. And my avoid is Chris Olave going as the wide receiver 9. He's never finished better than wide receiver 20. Also on an awful Saints team, projected to score the 7th least amount of points. Obviously, they have a bottom 5 offensive line, and Derek Carr, in my opinion, is bottom 10 at this point in his career.
Yeah, I really like both of those points there. I'm a big fan, Rich. I'm going to have to heavily agree. Moving on to mine, though. I took the flexes just because I wanted a little bit more variety. I'm actually going to have 2 targets because I'm in love with these 2 guys at their current ADP. First up is James Cook. I mean, some people love him or hate him. I mean, it really just comes down to the revamped offense. Joe Brady and that Bills team is going to transition into that more of a run-heavy offense. Josh Allen's not going to throw the ball as much himself. He doesn't have the receivers to do it. Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir can both be very good options. But James Cook, especially in the second half of the last year, 8. The guy is straight up a beast. He can break tackles. He was top 10 in elusiveness last year. I mean, I think he'll be a fantasy league winner as well in the third round. I think in the third round is an absolute steal for James Cook, who's the clear-cut bell cow in what's going to be still, I think, a very at least decent offense. And my one other target that I really want to touch on is my favorite value in all fantasy football, and that's Rashee Rice going in the 6th round. I mean, he will easily outperform this ADP. From week 12 on last year, he was a top 10 fantasy receiver last year, averaging 18 points a game. I mean, say what you want about the Chiefs wide receiver room. It's crowded. I don't think Xavier Worthy's that good of a talent. He's explosive, but he's not that good of a receiver. Rashee Rice is definitely the guy there. Mahomes will have another year to work on him. Rice isn't going to get a suspension, so that's why he's falling a little bit later in drafts because people still think, oh, he may get suspended. He's not. It's way too late for that suspension to come. He will eat when he's getting the ball thrown for Patrick Mahomes, and he's 100% the wide receiver one in Kansas City. And the guy I really want to avoid, the guy who shot up in a lot of draft boards, especially as of recently, is DeAndre Swift. And I just don't get the hype in Chicago. I get it'll be a very good offense, but he was RB20 last year behind a better O-line in the Eagles and had a much better system. I get Hurts took away a lot of the rushing touchdowns in Philadelphia, but I mean, his competition just comes up more. I mean, whether it's Khalil Herbert or Roshan Johnson that steps up as the RB2, he's not going to be a bell cow back. One of those guys is going to eat into his workload, if not both a little bit. I mean, I really just don't get the hype behind Swift. He's really just not that good of a running back. He really hasn't been. Ever since he left Detroit, he really just hasn't been the same. So I'm out on DeAndre Swift, especially at his current ADP. You're reaching for him at about a 4th-round pick. I would not spend a 4th-round pick on DeAndre Swift. And with that being said, though, past the 4th round, a lot of late-round sleepers this year. Every year there's that one guy. Last year you can say it was Puka, was the fantasy league winner. Here's our late-round sleepers / undrafted guys that we think can win your guys' league. Matt, I'll throw it to you first.
Yeah, I mean, my guy that I'm going to take in the late round is Bucky Irving, rookie running back out of Oregon. He went to Tampa Bay. If we look at Rachaad White, he was running behind a very solid offensive line last year, pretty decent offense, and was one of the most inefficient running backs in the entire NFL last year. I don't think that I don't think Todd Bowles and I don't think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to continue to put up with that. I think Bucky Irving is going to eat into those carries. He could potentially overtake Rachaad White as the running back 1 overall in Tampa Bay. I think he is full of talent. Rachaad White is coming off of a terrible year last year. If he continues to display that inefficiency, I think you could see Bucky Irving really eat into that workload and be a league winner, especially late in drafts.
Dom.
Yeah, so I'm going outside the guidelines a little bit. My guy isn't a deep sleeper, but he is falling in drafts for no reason, and that guy is T. Higgins. T. Higgins, before last year, was top 20 in 2021 and 2022. He was going in the third, 4th round. Now people are taking him in the 5th round, maybe even 6th round. This guy is in his contract year. Last year, the Bengals, they were just a mess. Everybody was hurt. And this year they're all healthy. I think the Bengals are gonna have a great offensive year this year. And taking T. Higgins in the 5th round when he could be a top 20 wide receiver, I'm taking that all day.
Rich.
An absolute hidden gem I have, wide receiver 54, is Curtis Samuel in Buffalo. He was just reunited with Joe Brady, which we've seen back in Carolina when they were together. Joe Brady used him like Shanahan uses Debo. And when they were together in Carolina, he averaged 14 points per game in 2020. And Buffalo truly does not have a wide receiver 1. And if you look, Curtis Samuel's played with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and now he's playing with a top 3 quarterback in the league and can play anywhere on the field, slot, running back, wide out, anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't my main guy, but I feel like Lat McConkey's name has to be thrown out. He's going so late for no reason. When you're the number 1 wide receiver for a borderline top 5 quarterback and you're going in like the 7th round, I feel like that's just absolutely crazy. But my main guy is one of my dynasty guys. I have to go with Chase Brown. Zach Moss is old. He's never performed, and veterans who bounce around the league who haven't proven themselves are never good options in fantasy. Chase Brown, we saw it at the end of last year, explosiveness in multiple games. He averaged 10+ yards per carry. Yes, it was in a minimal workload, but he's shown that explosiveness, and the Bengals coaching staff themselves have come out and said they are falling in love with his work ethic. He's a good run blocker. He will find ways on the field, and he gives you that dynamic upside that kind of a younger Joe Mixon would give you, but you're not going to find that in Zach Moss. Chase Brown is that young guy that can really step up, and that's going in the 10th, 11th round in some drafts, depending on what platform you're drafting on, and he can be a real league winner because when you're running in what I think will be a top 5 offense this year with a top 3 quarterback, I mean, you're bound to have a good season, and once again, Zach Moss has just never performed the way that people expect him to. But with that being said, that will do it here for our fantasy episodes. Just wanted to get out some of our early predictions. We'll be going week by week, going with our start sits, and have other segments going here, getting you guys hopefully winning your fantasy weeks each and every week. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please continue to stay tuned for more NFL and fantasy content each week. We're going to be pumping it out all season for you guys, trying to really get our name out on the map. But thank you guys once again for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.